Everybody get up. It's time to slam now. We got a real jam going now. Welcome to the What the What podcast. Here's your chance. Do your dance for the Space Jam. All right. I'm Ashby Brame, and joining me today, now that they are done washing their North Carolina basketball shorts that they wear under their uniform after every podcast, Eric Creech and Kyle Whitley.
Oh, yeah! He's back! He's out of retirement. Rumor has it he wanted to do a professional baseball career.
I did.
And then he, wasn't good at that, so he went off and
Called a baby instead.
Yeah, called a baby instead, and he's back on the podcast.
That's right. Coming back for 3 more titles.
What?
I didn't even have one to begin with.
Wait, we had 3 titles?
3 more. I mean, that's in addition to whatever you guys won while I was away. So
That's right. Well, you also have the Joe Davis Classic Trophy
that's
right
true.
behind
It's
you.
behind me in the room.
Yes.
So it's possible.
Yeah, we're so excited to have Kyle back.
I'm excited. We're doing this on a Saturday morning. It's really nice.
I know. Like,
Yeah.
you get
We're
up.
all in good moods. We haven't been at
Yeah.
work all day.
I know.
We got the Starbucks with us.
Ashby
know.
brought us all
As
Starbucks.
the basic people call it, Starbies.
Hey,
Who calls it? What?
Hated that.
What?
I'll be basic all day because I'm loving this.
Today I learned I don't like what basic people call Starbucks.
Starbies.
Oh.
Hey, it's okay.
Wow. Okay, well. All right. Come on, guys. It's game time. Get your hands on. Lace up your Nikes. Grab your Wheaties and your Gatorade. And we'll pick up a Big Mac on the way to the podcast. Please subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever it is you get your podcast. And, of course, rate and review us. 5 Monstars only.
I like what you did there.
Oh, yeah. Please also follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram by searching for What the What Media.
All one word.
I've missed it. I've missed it so much.
So
and
good.
find us on Twitter at WTW_media. And please share with your friends if you enjoyed today's episode or one of the 96 other What the What episodes that we have available in the archives. We're on that march to episode 100.
Yeah.
And on today's episode, we are taking a
Deep dive
into the 1996 classic movie,
Classic.
Space Jam.
We just busted everyone's eardrums.
Yeah.
Yes, we did.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
why I'm talking
Cool.
softly now.
Ease them back in.
Yeah. This is your spoiler warning. If you haven't seen Space Jam and you don't know the secret ingredients in Michael's special stuff, then we encourage you to watch this film first. With that being said, let's take our own personal spaceship to Moron Mountain and let's share with you what happened.
Ooh, okay. Here we go. Cold read. In Wilmington, North Carolina,
What?
that's where we are, sort of. In 1973, a young Michael Jordan is shooting basketball late at night and shares his dreams of playing professional basketball with his father, and his other dream of playing professional baseball, like his father. An extended title sequence showcases many Michael Jordan highlight reels and plays over the course of the first part of his NBA career, leading to the present time where Michael Jordan retires after winning his 3rd NBA championship. In the wake of the death of his father, Jordan decides to pursue a career in professional baseball.
Meanwhile, in outer space, the amusement park Moron Mountain faces decline. Its owner, Mr. Swackhammer, sends his diminutive minions, the Nerdlucks, to Earth to abduct the Looney Tunes in order to develop new attractions. Upon the Nerdlucks' arrival, Bugs Bunny and the other Looney Tunes take advantage of the Nerdlucks' small nature and challenge them to a game of basketball. Through a documentary of basketball, the Nerdlucks learn that sports best players are employed by the NBA and accept the proposal. They infiltrate the various basketball games in the USA, stealing the talents of NBA players Charles Barkley, Sean Bradley, Patrick Ewing, Larry Johnson, and Muggsy Bogues. They use the stockpiled talent to transform themselves into the large, muscular, talented Monstars, easily intimidating the Tunes and prompting Bugs to seek professional aid.
While golfing with Bill Murray, Larry Bird, and his personal assistant Stan Podolak, Jordan is suddenly lassoed down a hole and into the Looney Tunes world. Bugs explains the situation to Jordan, whom hope is placed on as one of the best basketball players in the world. Although reluctant, Jordan agrees to play after a confrontation with the Monstars insults his pride, and he organizes the Toons into a team called the Toon Squad. A female bunny named Lola, whom Bugs falls in love with, is added to the team thanks to her talents. Jordan sends Bugs and Daffy Duck back to his house to obtain his basketball gear, and when they arrive, Bugs and Daffy meet Jordan's dog, ironically named Charles. We'll talk about who that's named after later. And later seen by Stan, who follows them back to the cartoon world and joins the team as well. Meanwhile, the sudden incapacity of the 5 NBA players leads to a worldwide panic that results in the season being put on indefinite hold. The players try to restore their skills through practice, hospitalization, therapy, and prayer, to no avail.
The game between the Toon Squad and the Monstars eventually begins, but the Monstars dominate the first half, sinking the Toon Squad's morale. Stan overhears how the Monstars obtain their talent and informs Jordan. Bugs and Jordan rally the Toon Squad and they dominate the third quarter and the start of the fourth using old school gags and Acme weaponry. During a timeout, Jordan raises the stakes with Schwackhammer. A win by the Toon Squad would require the Monstars returning their stolen talents, while a win by the Monstars would allow Schwackhammer to make Jordan a new attraction for Moron Mountain for the rest of his life. Now more determined than ever to win, Schwackhammer orders the Monstars to win by any means necessary. Throughout the fourth quarter, they subsequently begin playing even rougher and dirtier than before against the Toon Squad, leaving most of their roster injured and unable to continue.
With 10 seconds left in the game, the Toon Squad are down by 1 point and 1 player, with only Jordan, Bugs, Lola, and Daffy left. Bill Murray unexpectedly arrives and is recruited to fill the spot.
Yes.
In the final seconds, Jordan gains the ball with Murray's help, but is pulled back by the Monstars. Remembering advice from Bugs, he uses a cartoon physics to extend his arm and dunk the ball, winning the match with a buzzer beater. Seeing the Monstars being reprimanded by Schwackhammer, Jordan helps them realize that they only listened to him because they were smaller. The Monstars encase Schwackhammer in a missile and send him to the moon. Giving up their stolen talent, the Nerdlucks are recruited into the Looney Tunes ensemble and drop off Jordan at his next baseball game.
Later, Jordan visits the incapacitated basketball players, and he returns their talent, to which the players convince a reluctant Jordan into participating in a 3-on-3 pickup basketball game. 2 years later, in 1995, Jordan returned to the Chicago Bulls, wearing number 45, to resume his basketball career as the movie ends. Now, I tell you, Kyle and Ash, we got to get new agents. We're getting screwed. And that brings us up to this episode's big question. So let's take a sip from that water bottle, get pumped up. Let's get ready to tip off. But first, some info about the movie. Space Jam, 1996 American live-action / animated sports comedy film, directed by Joe Pytka and starring basketball player Michael Jordan. It presents a fictionalized account of what happened between Jordan's initial retirement in the NBA from 1993 and his 1995 comeback. Yes, fictionalized. I'm a little bummed out about it too, honestly. In which he is enlisted by Looney Tunes to help them win a basketball game. Wayne Knight, Teresa Randall appear in supporting roles, while Billy Rest and Danny DeVito headlined the voice cast. Was the first feature film to be produced by Warner Brothers Featured Animation, and was released theatrically in the United States on November 15th, 1996, which means we're celebrating 25 years of it this November. It was a box office success, grossing over $250 million worldwide. I'm really tripping up
That's
here.
how money works.
I know. That's how money works. And becoming the highest grossing basketball film of all time, as well as the 10th highest grossing film of 1996. It received mixed reviews from critics, who were divided on the out-of-place merits and concept of combining Jordan with his profession with the Looney Tune characters, while many additionally praised the technical achievement of blending digitally live action and animation, particularly the basketball scenes, and the fateful Looney Tunes comedy. A sequel, starring LeBron James, scheduled for release on July 16th, 2021, which is a week. Yeah, it's a week.
Yeah. It'll be opening
the week after.
We post this Monday.
Yep.
Right.
So today's Monday.
Yeah.
Yep.
This weekend.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Go see
Right.
it. Have fun.
Take your kids.
It'll be on HBO Max as well as in theaters.
I've got to get HBO Max.
I know. Well, first question. What questions? First question. Did you like this film, and does it hold up 25 years later?
I think so. I like it. It's one of those ones that, for me as a child, it hit at just the right age that I absolutely loved it. I watched Looney Tunes all the time. And especially, like, even if you didn't watch basketball, you knew who Michael Jordan was. And I feel like that was one of the first times you had an athlete like that everybody, like, if you ask them, who's your favorite player? They'd say Michael Jordan, even if they didn't watch basketball. I did watch basketball, at least somewhat. And I loved basketball, so it was like one of those great things that you would kind of do playing with your toys and mix and match people, where you would have like Ninja Turtles wrestling, with your wrestling action figures. This is taking one of your favorite cartoons and adding in one of your favorite basketball players of all time, and it worked out really well. I do think it holds up. Part of that may just because I liked it as a child so much. But it's a fun thing. I think, we watched it again last night, and I do think as Sky gets older, we'll show it to her. And it's just a fun movie. I think it's, the same way a lot of movies like this are. There's a little bit of humor that's more of adult that kind of slides in under the radar that you get to enjoy. But I definitely think it holds up all these years later. And I definitely think, especially when it came out, in the 90s where you have all these other sports movies, especially for kids, this was just a great combination of both.
What do you think, Ashby?
So, I feel like I just want to be contrary.
That's fine. It's okay.
So,
Of course. We get called back for 10 minutes and
Right.
Ashby wants to disagree.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, I feel like you either have to be a child, on drugs, or really good at suspending belief to buy into this movie.
Can it be all?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I just feel like it doesn't make any sense. The technology holds up, right? So like the cartoons blending with like the real world and the animation, like I feel like the technology all holds up, but I feel like just being an adult takes things from you, and one of the things it takes from you is watching things that you really enjoyed as a child and just being like, none of this makes sense, and it's just like it doesn't follow its own rules, and the continuity is terrible, and I just can't enjoy it as an adult. I
just feel bad for you. Like I
Yeah.
hate
So
that
bad for
adulthood
you.
has stolen that from you.
I mean, there were parts of it that I found enjoyable, but for the most part, I just like rewatching some of the scenes. I was like,
Look, I'm going to quote
Meh.
the great Bugs Bunny here from this movie. Or paraphrase him, actually, because it doesn't have to make sense. This is Looney Tune Land. It doesn't have to make sense.
Well,
It's
that's a good point.
yeah.
Just a heads up with that mindset in mind. When you go see F9 soon, you're going to be very disappointed.
Yes.
Because it follows right in line with all of those things.
All those things. So
Also, honestly, like Michael Jordan is a goat at a lot of things, but he can't act.
no.
It was not.
No.
Just every time he had lines, I was like, I'm back out of it again.
And
I don't
that's
know.
and that's okay though. Like
Yeah.
that's the thing this movie wasn't made to win Oscars.
No.
Right.
It was not made to
Yes.
be like one of the best acted movies of all time. It was meant to combine two worlds that kids loved
Yes.
and melt them together into this super crossover type thing.
Look, all that being said, I loved it as a kid, and I'm definitely going to see the next one with LeBron. So, I mean,
Spoiler, LeBron's acting will not be good either.
I don't
Although
know.
he's been in movies
Just
already.
from the
so-
trailer, it seems like he's already bringing more personality to it than Jordan did. So,
Well,
I'm just saying.
Well, I mean, he's had 25 years to get ready for this.
that's right.
Right? He's
So-
like, I'm going to be in the second Space Jam one day. I'm gonna
They've been
be so
talking
good.
about the second Space Jam since like 98.
Exactly.
Yes,
So,
they
like,
have.
He's had time where, like, that's his goal.
Right.
Like, sure, he wanted to win a couple championships, but he's also like, if I get real good, there's
Right.
a chance I can be in Space Jam.
That's right.
And so that's where he's finally at now this time.
I mean, I the only other person I could think of would have been like Kobe. Could have probably led a Space Jam movie.
Maybe.
I think he could, but I don't know if you would get the same, like,
There's
I don't know.
I guess we can get into this conversation, but like part of the reason Michael Jordan worked for in my opinion for this movie is that he was undoubtedly the best in his field
Oh, sure.
at the time, and it's held up over time. He's still the
Right.
best of all time. And I heard rumors that they wanted to do this with other athletes, like maybe like Jeff Gordon, or like maybe Ken Griffey Jr. or something. Like I don't know if there was ever those rumors. They obviously didn't pan out, but I don't know if there was any truth to those. But I think it works when you've got people who are arguably their best in their field. And LeBron James, for all his faults, he is considered one of the top. I would say, depending on who you talk to, one of the top 5 basketball players in the history of the game.
Right.
well, worst case, this movie flops. And then
Yeah.
everybody would just say, well, he was just doing it on purpose. 'Cause
Yeah.
He does that every game.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, he does.
No, he doesn't.
I mean,
He does now that he's older. Yes.
although in that vein, right? it felt like sort of 70 minutes of just Michael Jordan is the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a promotion vehicle for Michael Jordan.
Right.
I mean,
And I'm sort of like, we get it, you know? Anyway.
I don't think you do though.
I don't think you do. You've missed this.
You've missed
whole
the
thing.
point.
We're gonna stop the
So
podcast.
here's the thing
and watch
about
it again
Michael
right
Jordan
now.
in 1990 in the 1990s. He was the greatest thing
Right.
for kids. He was the closest thing we had to a superhero in real life form.
Right.
True.
Like
We want to be like Mike.
Yeah, they had the. I mean, he was promoted to an obscene amount of kids throughout the late 80s and 90s with his Gatorade, McDonald's, and Wheaties and Hanes and all
I wore Hanes because of him.
all the stuff that I mentioned in our opening spiel there. I mean, like
Maybe it's because you weren't wearing the right underwear. Ashby.
Maybe it was,
That's what
actually.
it is.
Well, here's why I love the variety of interests we bring to this podcast, because the two of you were watching this movie and you were like, oh my God, it's Michael Jordan. And then also the Looney Tunes, right?
Of course.
And I was watching this movie and going, oh my God, it's the Looney Tunes and this dude named Michael Jordan who I've heard is great at basketball. Like, you see
I
what I'm
get that.
saying? So, like, I'm coming at it from a different perspective. Not just because I'm a girl. Like,
No, no.
I was not into sports as a child. Like, I played some sports, but I was not that girl. And some girls were that was tapped into the sports culture of the 90s. Maybe, like, boys were expected to, or were, you know, you were in it because your dad was interested in it or whatever. Like,
Well, I think the big thing, too, is he was so much more than just basketball. And I think that's where especially why they took him. Obviously, he was the greatest at what he did.
right. I remember all his commercials for sure.
And that's what I mean. It came
Which
from
is
a
probably
commercial.
how I knew that he was a big deal, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I wasn't watching
that's the
Bulls
thing, like,
games with
Sure.
my dad.
Michael Jordan was one of the first NBA athletes to really, I guess, like market themselves to like that level. Like
Right.
he was very conscientious about how
His brand.
appeared to the point where he refused to even make like political endorsements in the 90s because,
Right.
as he said, well, Republicans and Democrats buy sneakers too.
Right.
mean,
Right.
so-
Yeah. And I learned a lot more about that watching
The Last Dance.
The Last Dance.
Yes,
which is-
Erica mentioned that last night.
Yeah.
She's like, watching this makes me want to go back and watch that.
Yes.
again.
Yes,
Yes.
I want to rewatch that again too. Maybe that can be something we talk about at some point. But yeah, so back to the question. I really love this movie. It's one of my favorite movies as a kid. I had some of the action figures for it. I remember having, like, they were selling like the Monstar figures, and they had the Toon Squad, and I really loved the Monstars action figures. They were fun, and I could have them interact with my Power Ranger action figures
That's
too.
true. Makes sense.
Which would make sense. But it was a fun movie to me. You know, again, knowing that it was made for me as a kid, as a 10-year-old, you know, like I still look at it through that lens. It takes me back to 1996 whenever this came out. Anytime I hear the soundtrack, it takes me back. Like, it gives me like that soundtrack. I mean, I know we talked about it on the best soundtrack episode, but that soundtrack really was my first introduction to R&B. I don't know. There's a lot of positive memories associated with this movie for me. I love again, watching all these basketball players. They had two Charlotte Hornets in this movie. I mean, they had Muggsy Bogues and Larry Johnson. And as a kid who loved the Hornets growing up, I loved both of those guys. I mean, it's just there's so many positives I see in this movie that, yes, it overshadows the illogical nature of it. It overshadows the fact that these guys aren't really actors. But all that set aside, I just enjoyed the movie. And I had fun watching it, and as a kid, I had fun watching it as an adult. I mean, yes, I mean it was just good fun to me, and I do believe it does hold up 25 years later, in that context, knowing that it is 25 years old, knowing that you have to set yourself. It's the quintessential 90s movie, where you have the greatest athlete of all time, but especially in his prime, playing basketball. So
Well, I think it goes a lot with the culture of the time. You briefly mentioned that as well, but Larry Johnson, his grandmama, appearing on Family Matters.
Yes.
I even think back to like a Doug episode where there's this basketball player that's put out his own line of sneakers, literally Michael Jordan, Air Jordan, but it's not him. obviously for copyright reasons, everything else. But everybody's going nuts trying to buy his shoes, wanting his shoes. You're not cool if you don't get his shoes. He goes and gets the last pair the store has. It's a billion sizes too big. He walks around, trips all over the place. And then I think he meets the star or whatever there. But it's like one of those things that this was the culture.
That episode, yeah.
Yeah, it's the culture that we lived in as kids. And so it made sense to throw this in there. Obviously with Michael Jordan, as we already talked about. As an adult, you do look back. There's a lot of times that I was like, okay, well, why didn't anybody in the world think anything about a spaceship flying over the ball
on
game?
A baseball
later
field.
landing on the
Right.
field.
Oh, no. Super
Which
cool.
featured the Carolina Mudcats, by the way.
Is that where that was?
No, that wasn't in Five County, but the
Okay.
Mudcats were the opponent
Okay.
for the Birmingham Barons. Because in
I
the
had no idea.
90s, the Birmingham Barons
That's right. I
were...
forgot he was playing minor league.
Yeah, he was playing AA ball in Birmingham, which was the Chicago White Sox
You know they probably did that
affiliates.
because
Yeah.
he's from North Carolina.
Yes, and
Yeah.
the Carolina Mudcats they were a AA team in the 90s. They're a low-class single A team now.
You know what? You didn't have to add low class.
I'm saying, like, don't diss on them.
Well, no, there's two classes of
They're
single A ball.
trying
There's
their
low.
best.
We still enjoy going, and they have great fireworks.
There's
You
low
leave them
class
alone.
single A and there's high class single A, and
I will go buy my ice cream out of a baseball hat and enjoy it.
I will too. Don't get me wrong. I'm just telling you what.
Why you got to bring class into it? Is it because they're in Zebulon?
Yes, it's because of their incentive.
That parking lot.
But yeah,
still
so
gets packed.
the final scene where the spaceship descends, the Mudcats are the opponents for the Birmingham Barons.
Funny. I
Nice.
love
Which is
it.
just fun for me. And the other fun thing was whenever the spaceship from the I think it was the Monstars
Maybe no one.
shot out of a Piggly Wiggly parking lot. Yes, and I was like, oh, we have those.
Oh, we have those. Yeah.
I don't know why.
Was that
Oh,
Kinley?
man.
As a child, I wonder why I didn't try to go dig through a
Yeah.
Piggly Wiggly parking lot.
Well,
Maybe
as
no
a
one
child-
freaked out about the spaceship because they were like, "Oh, he's an alien. That makes so much sense."
Probably.
Well, as a child, I had to be like not restrained, but I had to ask like a couple of times, like if I dig here on the third hole here at Cardinal
Totally.
Country Club,
The Cardinal Country Club.
will we end up in
Right.
the Looney
Will
Tunes
Bugs
land?
Bunny pop out? Right. Oh my goodness.
Oh, what are you doing? This movie's where I learned what a divot was.
Sure.
By the way, so,
Same.
Speaking
I'm
of
fixing
favorite,
a divot.
yeah. Speaking of favorite scenes, that's one of my favorite scenes.
Yes, let's
where
move
he's like,
on
"I'm
to
coming, Michael."
Yeah.
He's like, digging.
Yeah, let's move on to what some of our favorite scenes or quotes are. So you enjoy the Wayne Knight just digging a hole there.
digging a hole. Like he's gonna save Michael Jordan. Can you imagine those seeing Michael Jordan, who by the way you're in charge of, right? Like he's your responsibility, getting sucked through
And the
a
great
wormhole.
thing to me is like Larry Bird and Bill Murray are like, yeah, he just probably just trying to get away from that Stan character.
Yeah.
I mean, what is that? Where'd he find him? I'm going to give us both threes on that, Larry. We weren't in any emotional
Well,
state
look,
to punt.
if you've seen Bill Murray in Caddyshack, then you probably
Yes.
know why he took that so well because of his maybe altered state of mind. He's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh yeah, makes sense. Moving on to the next hole.
I loved it right before that, too. He looks at Stan. He's like, what kind of camera is that? And he points, don't you point that. And takes it and throws it. And he's like, no, you don't do that. And then they, like you said, walk straight to the thing. He's like, okay, we'll just head out.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm gonna give us three for that one. We were not in any emotional state to punt there after we lost our buddy Jordan, and then just walk away.
Yeah.
he doesn't go home. I mean,
No.
that's funny. I enjoyed the introduction of Lola Bunny,
Sure.
which she was fantastic.
What do you think, Ashby? You're making faces.
I had something in my eye.
Oh, okay.
I'm just kidding. I just don't watching it as an adult, obviously, and watching it 25 years later. She's the girl on the team, right? But like, why does she have to be hot? Like, it's like she's a sexy bunny, and I'm just anyway, whatever. It's fine.
Unfortunately,
Wait, you found her sexy?
I mean, she's really good at basketball.
I just thought
I thought she was just good at basketball. Yes, but I understand what you're saying.
No, totally.
There was a lot of over sexualization of female cartoon characters
Right.
in the 90s.
Right.
Now,
Sure.
they do fix that in the new Space Jam where
Yes.
Lola Bunny is just a basketball player. in
Right,
this
and
one.
also voiced by Zendaya, so I can't
Zendaya,
wait for that.
exactly.
But I was just like, why does she...
But as a kid, I didn't notice the
Right, right.
As
As
a kid, I
kids, yeah,
thought
you don't
this
notice
chick
that.
can ball.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
she can play
Yeah, she
ball.
comes in dunks, and they
Like,
all have
she's
like heart eyes or whatever.
legitimately the second best basketball player on that
Right.
team.
As a
Right.
child, I think as like a child, I looked at it and saw that as attractive just because it was a female that came in and did a great job at what they were
Right,
doing.
right.
And that's not me trying to like oversimplify it as an adult now. I just remember watching movies like that and like say Little Giants. I used to have a crush on her like nobody's business.
Right.
But it wasn't because like, oh gosh, they've dressed her up to be some like hot little girl. Like it was very much
Because she's competent.
she's awesome and does a great job at what
Right.
she does. That's attractive. Like,
Yeah.
So
And
as
it's
a
also
child, I
nice
had
that
trust in
like
her.
Lola obviously doesn't take any of their mess, you know.
Sure. Yeah.
So
Don't ever call me
doll.
doll.
Mm-hmm.
I love how she like
Yes.
flicks her ear over, you know.
I love the like scene. I think it's whenever. Oh, sorry, move something around. They are at I think Michael's house, and they're trying to talk about like what they should name the team, and he's like, "We should be the Ducks."
What kind of Mickey Mouse organization would name their team the Ducks?
As the Mighty Ducks have literally just come out in the couple years prior. So
Nice little shot at Disney there from Warner Brothers.
Warner Brothers, yeah.
Oh, obviously the halftime speech by Jordan, you know, where he's just trying to get them all pumped up, and they're like, "Yeah, I've heard that before, you know, just blah blah blah." And of course, Bugs Bunny comes in with like some water. This is Michael's secret stuff, and it just like it's literally a placebo,
Right. Right.
and it gets them pumped up.
Right.
And the whole time I'm thinking, like, whenever everyone gets hurt, like at the end of the movie, they only have 4 players left. I'm like, go put more water in the bottle there, Bugs, and
Right,
and,
right.
give it.
But
to
also,
them.
then as an adult, I was like, is this a metaphor for steroids?
Honestly, it might have been.
I just was waiting for them to like shake it off because like in those cartoons back then there was like and then all of a
Right.
sudden
Yeah.
they're fine.
Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it worked out great for them. But no, evidently there's like a limit. It's kind of like a video game. You can get hurt so many times,
Right.
and then you have to
Right.
at least wait out for a little while.
But I also love that it's like they remember in the second half that they're cartoons.
Yes.
And they can do cartoon things. You know? Like where was this in the first half of the
It's
game?
no longer just about being a game. At this point, we can stretch it.
Right. Yeah. Like Wile E. Coyote blows up the basket or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love to the first scene, and that was just because watching it last night. It hit me a lot harder than I expected.
Right.
Because I Believe I Can Fly literally is the first thing that hits. And I wasn't
Right.
expecting, like, I'd forgot. I knew the song obviously was there.
They also play it like 80 bajillion times throughout
Sure.
the movie.
But, like, at that point, it's like starting, all of a sudden, you're like, oh man, this is the scene where he's with his dad. Especially, I think, because of watching, like,
Right. The
whole
Last Dance.
The Last Dance, and, like, seeing that a little bit more in the relationship he had with his dad.
Right.
And then seeing this after not thinking
Right.
about it since watching that.
And watching the vulture media follow him into the
Yes.
locker room and watch him
And cry on the
sob.
floor.
Yeah.
Like, so that's in your heart and in your mind, and all of a sudden this happens, and it's literally like, oh man, this is this scene, and then boom, here comes I Believe I Can Fly on top of that. So it was like, it definitely like hit me in the gut last night, where I didn't quite tear up, but at the same time, it's like, oh, this is a lot more emotional now watching it after seeing that before.
Absolutely.
So I do enjoy that, and I enjoyed that as a kid because I feel like having those moments of late nights shooting basketball and like your dad being like, okay, you need to come in, and just having those moments. I never, those type of things as a kid gave you hope that one day you could be a major.
Oh,
basketball
absolutely.
player. I used to tell people I want to play for the Tar Heels.
Oh, same thing. When
Yeah.
people ask me in middle school, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a basketball player. I'm going to go to Carolina.
I'll play for
And
Tar
I'm going
Heels.
to play for the Tar Heels. I'll play with Antoine Jameson and Vince Carter. I know they're in
They're
college
still gonna be
now.
there.
They'll
Yeah.
still be there. They'll have eligibility, I promise.
Like, and I love that about childhood. Like, there's a part of being adults that like I hate that like we just over logicalize. I mean, that's not even a word, but we think too logically about some of that stuff. And as I understand, you got to be responsible. But there's something about being a child that just seeing this and just being like, oh, that could happen. Like, I could do that. That could be me.
Well, it's like
Right.
anytime a kid says they want to be a YouTuber,
Sure.
I don't try to shut that dream
No.
down.
Right.
Because I understand it.
Right.
I do try to give them, general advice of what that means.
Right.
So that, they understand that, hey,
Right.
you know,
Don't like kill their dream with the statistics.
no. But I want
That's
them
a
to,
little different when a 6-year-old says that,
Yeah.
and when like a 16-year-old says that, it's like you need to really start to looking at the reality of like earning a degree and having a backup plan.
But I'm not a dream killer because I
That's
have
fair.
those dreams. As,
Well, the same way like a lot of these YouTube people, literally, and, of course, there's the smaller kids like Ryan that curated Ryan's World that's going crazy and for everything else. But a lot, especially like the car people I watch, a lot of them started as just him and a guy in high school in his like garage and like horrible videos, not good at all, but just having a passion to keep pushing forward through everything. To like they went
So
to
what we're
college
saying
and then
is
dropped
that
out.
three
But-
of us could still make it big.
That's what I'm
100%.
hearing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is a passion project. We've talked about this. This
100%.
is something that we enjoy. I
Right.
mean, it's definitely a dream come true. I mean, it's something that me and Kyle have talked about for several years. And we're glad that you came on board with us last year. And it's definitely a passion project. So, but that first scene, like, I agree that the emotions that it it kicks up, because I remember being outside shooting hoops late at night. We had the little floodlights on in the outside the house, and I'm just shooting basketball up until 11:30 until my parents have to tell me to go in. I remember having dreams of being able to hit game-winning shots and lowering the goal so I can dunk, because I wasn't like that kid who could just dunk it, as a kid. I wanted a chain net for the goal, so it would make that cool little ching noise when you make it. And a friend of mine had one, which was the coolest thing. So,
it makes me think too, and it reminds me, and I mean, maybe this moves into what works best. I don't want to push it too far forward, but it worked for me as a child to push that creative side of myself. Like, I went outside. I remember playing, I'm doing air quotes right now, with the Looney Tunes in my driveway. It wasn't Michael Jordan wasn't there anymore. It was me playing with the Looney Tunes. I remember, talking it out in my head and being like, hey, Bugs, throw me the ball. And, you toss the ball up to yourself, whatever. Just, and it sounds dumb as an adult, but as a child, that was how I spent afternoons. I'd go home from school, and that was that same way. Even with Mighty Ducks, I pretended I was playing with the team by myself in the driveway.
Well, as a kid, you could do that. That's another thing adulthood steals from you is imagination.
Yes.
Bring it back. Start playing outside with Bugs Bunny.
Exactly.
So I have two things more I want to mention favorite scenes and favorite quotes. The first is when Michael Jordan's up at bat. During the scene where he's actually batting for the Birmingham Barons, and the catcher's like, "Hey man, thanks for autographing that. Those baseballs for my kids. They're gonna love it. Or basketball for my kids. They're gonna love it." And then the guy's like, "All right, fastball, don't swing." And then Jordan looks at him. He's like, and the catcher's like, "No, don't swing." So he doesn't swing. And then it's like, "Okay, here's a curveball, swing." And he swings him and says, "All right, hey, here's a slider," or whatever it is, slider. Don't swing it. And Michael swings anyway. And he's like, "I told you not to swing." He's like, "Couldn't help it."
He's like, "I totally understand. Great job, man.
Great job, buddy." And everyone's just cheering him as he strikes out for the third time that day. And it's like,
that's a good cut, Mike.
It's a good cut.
That's a good strikeout, Mike.
That's
real good. Whenever I strike out, it looks bad, man. Bad, real bad.
You look great. I just love that scene where everyone's just treating him like a king because he's Michael Jordan, to the point where even the opposing team's like, "We're going to help you out here."
Even telling his son that later, he's like, "Man, does everybody bash on you?" And he's like, "Actually, it's different. It's worse. Everybody's really nice about it."
Right.
And then a quote from old Stan. He shows up in Looney Tune Land. He's like, "Come on, Michael, let me help. I'm not very tall, but I'm slow."
I love it. He's listening. He's like, "I'm not very tall. I'm large, and I'm slow."
That's me playing any sport.
Yep. That's me showing up to play basketball, and everybody's like, "We're going to do full court." It's like, no, how about we just stay on this half?
Right, yeah.
You don't need to run down there.
That's
We got a goal right here.
When we used to do basketball and Bible study, we would not do full court for that reason. It's like,
you got two large men heading up basketball for teams, and they're like, "Let's run full court." Heck,
it's like, no, we got we'll run 3-on-3 on either side.
We got two basketballs, 2 goals. That means we can play 2 games.
That's right. That's right. The other quote I really enjoy was from Foghorn Leghorn, where the Monstar's like, "Are you chicken?" He's like, "Well, I resemble that remark."
And then they fry him.
And then they fry him. "Did you order original recipe or extra crispy?"
Poor chicken. Oh man.
I wonder what worked best.
What worked best? I think the concept of mashing these two worlds worked really well. I think it ended up being a proven.
Yes.
I don't know why they haven't done anything with something like this again, because...
Well, they are.
I mean, I
it
know
comes
they
out
are.
this weekend.
Yeah, but before now. I don't know why it's taken them 25 years to do something.
Did they do a Looney Tunes movie with...
They did. It was back in action with Brendan Fraser.
Brendan Fraser. That's
but that's still, he's a legitimate actor. I mean, that's different.
Yeah.
Well, you said it, not me.
Yeah, I was going to say. It's like George of the Jungle, sure. But,
although I will
The Mummy?
Look, The Mummy is an excellent movie.
Okay.
I will defend it to the death. Anyway.
The Rock got his movie starts in The Mummy 2.
Anywho. Speaking of that, the technology, I'm going to walk back a little bit of what I said earlier about Michael Jordan being a poor actor. I still think that, he read his lines with a zero inflection, but whatever. However, when it comes to this idea, if you really think about it and you think about the filming technology and you think about all of his scenes with the tunes, he was having to talk to a tennis ball or air or whatever. that's where I'm like, you know what? Actually, he's probably a decent actor because he had to carry on a conversation and play a game with things that weren't there, right?
He was literally doing what I was doing in my backyard.
Exactly.
Like, hey, Bucks,
literally.
give me the ball.
Right. So, I mean, you know, hey, you could have grown up and been an actor because
Sure.
you're really
Still
good
can.
at
On
working.
YouTube.
Yeah, working off of things that just don't exist.
Mm-hmm.
So I just thought that was really interesting, and I think that has to be one of the things that work best because it holds up. Like you can watch it 25 years later, and the technology is still. I mean, there's no like sometimes things like that look dated, but the technology for having that mix between live and animation still looks like it could have been done today with the technology that's.
It blended
ahead.
really well.
Yeah.
What I add to it too, and it's honestly kind of one of the fun facts I looked up, so we'll just kind of throw it in here. But with this movie, it's different because if you think the time before where we've seen this is Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which came out a few years prior, a couple whatever prior, and that was the first time we really saw humans, and cartoons and vice versa, or cartoons in the real world, him in Toonland. But I was looking at like some behind the scenes stuff for this movie, and a lot of the animation by this point you had CG, or at least the beginnings of CG. So you saw the like framework of like a film, and then you would see them hand drawing like Bugs Bunny over top of it. But then they were able to move it all into this like to the computers and color them and stuff. And I had never paid attention to it until I watched it last night after watching those behind the scenes stuff. And you see a lot more color and definition with the tunes where they pop a little bit more. With like shadows, a little bit more roundness, just the texture of it a little bit. They are hand drawn still, but whenever you see it, they've colored them inside a computer. So you see Bugs that looks a little bit more, especially when he's in the real world, he pops a little bit more than just a hand drawn Bugs Bunny walking through the land.
Right.
As well as like a lot of like spaceship stuff and other things you start realizing. As a child, I didn't think anything about it. All was animation, but now you see it's a little bit more where it's computer done, where it's not so much the other. But same way, it holds up where it's blended well. Where it's not so much like, there's this and here's that. You believe that Michael Jordan's literally there talking with some cartoon characters.
Right.
And the same way with Who Framed Roger Rabbit's still great. And that still holds up. And it's still like, especially for the time, was amazing. But to see it done now. And the same way, too, going into the new movie that's coming out this weekend. I liked it at first where the trailer all of a sudden threw LeBron James in there and he was a cartoon. I like how they did that where it's like if you're in the toon world, you're a cartoon now. And then whenever they brought everybody back to the real world or to the other world, whatever.
The cartoons become
the cartoons become more real in the similar way that it made me think about last night when they're at Michael's house.
Right.
And how a little bit more rounded and stuff they look. This new one, you see the texture of their fur and everything else.
Right.
Where it's still like, they didn't try to make it human. It's still animated, but at the same time, you get such a better vibe of what it could be now in the real world.
Well, I think animation has caught up to that point. Like when we have like live action Jungle Book and live action Lion King or whatever, it's not a real lion. It's still animation, but the technology you can see every hair in the lion's mane and stuff. So,
I thought moving on to something else that worked. I know we talked about this off air. Because we have no idea why Bill Murray was in this movie. But I thought he worked really well in this movie.
I love Bill Murray.
Yeah.
I thought his just random inclusion in this movie
well, it's just like
worked
Caddyshack.
really well.
It's like, they basically were just like, hey, we need a role for Bill Murray because we want Bill Murray in the movie. And so they just say, hey, Bill, come in and just be Bill Murray, basically.
And I love that. And I love the fact
It's great.
he just brings that whole comedic act to this movie in the same way, especially now for a lot longer and we're older now. You realize that's Bill Murray in real life.
Yeah.
Like where there's documentaries now that talks about the entire story of Bill Murray where he shows up at random people's houses. Next, he's partying with people in their own house. He's in the kitchen doing the dishes at somebody's house. Yeah. Like if you haven't seen that documentary, I don't remember what it's called, but it's pretty much like stories of people's interactions with Bill Murray where he realizes how famous he is. Yeah. And has fun with it. Where if people like would go back and tell the stories, maybe they'll believe it, maybe they won't. To the point I remember one of the stories where he walked up and shoved a guy into a bush. And like the guy got angry and looked up and realized it was Bill Murray, and he said,
"My bad."
He looked at him and said, "No one's ever going to believe you," and like walked off. Like, and that I think that's just Bill Murray, and I love that about that being in this movie, where sure you have cartoons and you have everything else, but he brings a different humor to the movie that you just light up. You start smiling when he shows up because it's going to be something that's funny.
I like the 4 college students who were like film students, and they randomly ran into Bill Murray in an airport.
Yes.
And he did the like Wes Anderson slow walk with them and let him film it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was hilarious.
I hope
so
that,
good.
when my YouTube, fame hits, I can do such things like that.
Yes, 100%.
All right, what else worked the best for this movie?
That's all I have.
Honestly, I just think the type of movie it was, especially for the time period, and I'm not going to go overboard on it because I talked a lot about it earlier, but I just think taking things together, which something like the Looney Tunes, that is just such a well-known, historic, classic thing as far as who they are as a cartoon series, as characters, and combining them with something as a star today. It could have flopped. It really could have. Like, I feel like if you would have done this with Disney characters, I don't know if it would have worked this way. If you had Mickey Mouse and his friends, they're two different styles. And I remember as a child, you had Looney Tunes and you had Mickey Mouse and all his friends. Don't get me wrong, I loved both of them. But it's two very different styles of characters and their actions and their humor. So I think when they were able to do this, it took the right characters and the right athlete to put in here where it didn't turn into it's Jeff Gordon and, the Looney Tunes. So it's like, I don't care nothing about NASCAR. I'm not going to see this movie. Versus Michael Jordan was just everywhere. He was on your McDonald's commercials. He was on commercials with Bugs already selling shoes. He was everywhere. You're going to love that. I mean, again, it's cartoon. It's a child's movie technically. So I get, the stuff that's a little doesn't work. But I think especially for that time period for who we were as kids, it worked really well. And I do think we're going to see it going forward with the new movie.
So I was going to transition us into the next section a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
There was something that hit me a little different as an adult where when the players lose their talent.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a little funny because I guess they had to do something really obvious looking. So it was really apparent that that's what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so like the idea that if you suddenly lost your ability to play basketball at a professional level, you also like maybe couldn't walk or something.
Sure.
Like they had to act like stupefied basically. And so you're like, well, I think you could still function as a human being without your talent, right? But it was just really funny. And then I as a kid, I really loved the scene in the hospital where they're all just like questioning like what's happening, and it's meant to be a little funny. But then as an adult, I started thinking, I was like, how, like, think about the one thing that you feel good at that like is tied into your identity, and then just the crisis, the personal crisis of losing that overnight.
There's a lot of adult humor in those scenes too.
Yes.
Where Charles is,
Yes.
at the church. And he's like, "I promise I'll never go out with Madonna again."
Yes.
And then the doctor, like the psychiatrist, is asking Patrick Ewing, "Have you had any problems with performance in other areas?" And Ewing sits up. He's like, "No,
No.
just asking."
Just asking.
I remember that
Right.
flying over my head as a child, but
Yes.
just still think it was hilarious because it's like,
Yes.
he's talking about how he can't make a sandwich or like whatever. Like, you have no idea. But
Yeah.
And of course, the humor of the four of the guys with the doctor walking in the hospital, and
Yes.
then three of them
and
hit.
because they're so tall.
So tall.
And him
And it's just
both
the doctor must go just still going. So.
Bugsy Bones.
Well, speaking of those five guys, let's I have a little section here. Where are they now? Mm-hmm. And there's six main like basketball players. I know we have Larry Bird in there and some other guys in here like in the background or whatever. But these were the six main guys whose talent was on display. So let's start with Michael Jordan.
Look, just watch The Last Dance, okay? That's
Yes,
all you need to
watch
say.
the last
100%.
watch the last
Watch The
dance,
Last
and that'll
Dance.
tell you everything you need to know about Michael Jordan.
where's that
He
at
is-
now? Is it still on?
I think
it
it's
was
on Netflix.
I think it's
Yeah.
still on Netflix, yeah.
Michael Jordan is currently the owner of the Charlotte Hornets.
That's right.
And his company, the Jordan brand, is actually its own subsidiary of Nike now. Like it's its own thing. They're his own logo and everything for.
Makes sense.
And they just announced a couple of days ago that they're having the Jordan brand Invitational College Basketball in-season tournament. And the first four teams invited are the first four teams to actually use the Jordan brand as their apparel. So North Carolina, Oklahoma, Florida, and Michigan will be taking place in that tournament starting in December 2022.
That just happens to also be a really good geographical range.
And that's not just
You
for
know.
the men. That's also the women's teams as well are also going to be as a part of that. as
Girls
well.
play basketball too?
Yes, they do.
Duh.
Charles Barkley, he is currently a host for, is it Inside the NBA or Yes, for the TNT pregame and postgame and halftime shows with he's with Shaquille O'Neal.
Sharp dresser.
Yes,
That Charles Barkley.
He's a terrible golfer.
Look, who among us?
And him and Jordan were really good friends. I don't know if their friendship is on hold now. I know they've had some issues, but they used to play golf together. That's one of the reasons Barkley and all these guys are in this movie because of their relationship with Michael.
Right.
But a fun little nod. The dog in this movie is named Charles, because Charles Barkley. And
Stop it.
There's a part of me.
Wait, Gnarls Barkley?
Yes, Gnarls Barkley.
That all makes sense now.
Part of me wonders if that was a female dog, if that's Jordan's way of telling Charles that.
Wow.
Hey.
Wow.
Just a heads up of who you are in relation to me. But,
speaking of friendship.
Family show.
Yeah.
You know who wasn't in this movie? Scottie Pippen. And I'm mad about it, especially after watching The Last Dance. My man gets a terrible long-term contract, and he doesn't get to be in Space Jam. Get out of here.
I'm not gonna lie,
his fault.
I was a big Scottie Pippen.
I love Scottie Pippen fan growing
That
up.
is victim blaming, Eric.
Yep. There was that part of me as the child that's like, everybody loves Michael Jordan. I want somebody else, and so it's like Scottie Pippen. Like I had a Scottie Pippen jersey. I didn't have a Jordan jersey.
In NBA Jam, Michael Jordan was not a playable character because he didn't
give him the rights to his character,
his likeness or whatever. So Pippen and Rodman were the and like B.J. Armstrong and who was it Horace Grant?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they were the best characters on the Bulls. I mean, but Pippen was the main guy on the Bulls.
Look, and if there was anyone that is like primed to turn into an alien, it's Rodman, right? Like, come on.
I'm pretty sure.
And I think he would agree. Like, I'm not ragging on him.
It's probably a money issue at this point.
Speaking of Madonna.
With Rodman, I mean, he was already kind of a bad boy at that point.
Right.
But he had not yet married Carmen Electra. He had not yet dyed his hair. He wasn't even on the Bulls at this point. He didn't join the Bulls till the 96 season.
That's true. He was on the side.
And in this movie, this took place, he was with the Spurs. The Pistons, prior to joining the Bulls.
Look, I make Hunter, my brother, so mad because I literally know nothing about sports. And I'm really proud of it, actually. Like, it's just not my wheelhouse. It never will be. But I love documentaries.
Sure.
And so what I'll do is I'll watch sports documentaries and just, like, take that knowledge in and then try to speak with authority on things about sports. So ever since I saw The Last Dance, all I can talk about in sports conversations is how you should never sign a long-term contract. Yeah. And anytime Hunter hears me talk about it, he's like, you don't know anything. Like, stop acting like you do.
So that sounds like somebody that signed a long-term contract.
Yeah, like, you should never sign it. Really, in the long run, like, salary-wise, like, know your value. Like, just short-term contracts are where it's at. Like, I'm on freaking ESPN.
Sure.
The risk with short-term contracts is if you get hurt.
That's true.
And
they can write you off.
They can write you off easily. But the risk with long-term contracts is you outplay your value.
Correct.
And you don't make the money you're due.
Which is what happened to Scottie Pippen.
Exactly. So there, which I get Scotty's point of view. He wanted the money because that was a lot of money to him. But if he had, in today's world, if he had a decent agent, there was no way they'd ever let him sign that contract. So.
Right.
Well, the same way, before you move to the next character, Charles Barkley himself, I think it shined in this movie.
Yes.
To the point that I was the same way as Ashby. Like, I knew certain characters. I feel like I watched UNC because my grandpa really liked UNC. And I liked basketball, but I've never been a person that really sits down and watches all the games of anything. I have tons of friends that do. And I usually know at least a lot of the characters and different stuff like that. Or not characters, but players. With this coming out, Charles Barkley became more real to me, where you saw him more than just a name. He honestly was kind of the big one out of the rest of the group, at least talked about in this movie, especially, but even player-wise. But he's the one that's killing people. Which one is he? And then there's the whole scene where he plays the girl, or plays that team, and the girl dunks on him. He's like,
this isn't Charles Barkley. This is just a wannabe who looks like him.
Get out
be
of here,
gone,
man.
wannabe. Be gone.
I remember to that point, though, too, going to the Nike outlet with my mom at the Carolina Potter, the outlets or whatever. Charles Barkley shoes were in there, and I wanted them. I was like, I need these, because I was playing middle school basketball, I think, at that point, where I was a little bit older, and I was like, he had stuck out to me from that, and I was like, I need these. In my brain, I was like, I can't afford like Jordans, but maybe I can get Barkleys. Like, they still were like $100 or so. My mom was like, no, you're not getting these.
Right.
And the same way, we used to have this little store in Kinley. I think it was called Super 10.
Super 10. It's where the It used to be the gym, and now it's just a building beside Piggly Wiggly.
They do
now.
stuff on Saturdays.
Yeah.
But I remember going in there with my grandpa, and they would have like a rack of basketball jerseys. And I've come to realize as I got older,
I bought a Grant Hill jersey from there.
I had a Charles Barkley jersey from there. I came to realize a lot of these jerseys they've moved to another team now, so we're going to sell all these real cheap at this other store.
I had a Grant Hill Pistons jersey from there, and this is well after he was with the Pistons.
I had a Suns jersey for I think Charles Barkley.
Yeah, and then he moved to the Sixers.
Yeah, and I had that, and I wore it proudly. Me not watching games, I had no clue he didn't play for them anymore. I was like, it's Charles Barkley. Like, I got this, And so he's
the funny thing is, I would love those retro jerseys.
Oh,
now.
sure. They charge you more now than
I know.
Right.
One more thing with Charles Barkley, his conversation with the psychiatrist. There's this girl, 5 foot nothing, blocked my shot. And where were you when you had this dream? It wasn't a dream. It really happened.
Look, talk about acting skills. Charles Barkley killed it in this movie, honestly.
Yes.
Like, with the subtlety.
He had the most personality
He
of all the
did.
players.
He
And
did.
you felt so bad for him, leaned up against that fence watching them play.
Yes.
Hey, can I play?
Can I play?
I know, it's so good. Anyway.
Oh,
He should have.
Charles Barkley's the reason I call it. And when I'm referring to anything as terrible, that's terrible.
That's terrible.
That's terrible. Patrick Ewing, who's probably the third, the next biggest name on this list, because him and Barkley and Jordan were all on the Dream Team, which was in 1992. Ewing had a pretty decent, good career with the New York Knicks. He was the number 1 overall pick for New York in 1985. Big man, was just one of the faces of that 90s era. He ended up coaching, was an assistant coach in the NBA. With the Charlotte Bobcats in 2013, actually, and then for Orlando, he was an assistant coach, and then he became the head coach at his alma mater, the Georgetown Hoyas, where he is today. He led them to the 2021 NCAA basketball tournament.
Okay.
So that's Patrick Ewing, and then we get to some of the lesser knowns.
How are you going to do Larry Johnson like that?
Well, in the
Grandmama, sir.
in the
Grandmama.
hierarchy. You have the big three: Larry Johnson, the Charlotte Hornet, Grandmama, national champion with UNLV in 1990 and 1991. There's not really a lot about what he's doing now. I know it says that he filed for bankruptcy in 2015 because he owed more than $120,000 in unpaid child support.
Grandmama.
I know.
Oof.
So,
Oof, as the
but I
kids say
don't
these
really,
days.
I don't really know what he's up to now. So, if anyone knows,
Apparently not paying child support.
apparently, so yeah, Muggsy Bogues, who 5'3", I'm a whole 7 to 9 inches taller than this guy, but he can dunk a basketball and I can't. He was short, and I think that's why kids loved him, because he was
But
about
he's
their
also
size.
slow.
Just a heck of a ball player. He played for Wake Forest in college. Was just a fun guy to watch for the Hornets. He was that. So on NBA Jam, we go back to that game.
That's how honestly I learned about a lot of these characters.
Him and Larry Johnson were a great duo to use in that game, because Johnson could dunk and Muggsy was just scrappy and had good ball handling skills. And
It also goes back to a child in the 90s where we were from North Carolina. So I look back on pictures, and my cousin Lewis and I are dressed up in Hornet stuff all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not that we went to the store and said, "Hey, Mom, I want Hornet stuff."
Right.
It's like, no, like,
It was
well,
everywhere.
it's everywhere, and that's what you buy for your child. And
Yeah.
I'm glad for it. Like, I was thankful.
It's like
but
the Panthers.
Yeah,
you know,
same.
It's just part of the culture.
he was named the head coach of the Charlotte Sting for the WNBA before that team folded in 2007. And he was announced as an inductee to the North Carolina Sports Hall of Fame in 2020. So good for Muggsy Bogues. And then Sean Bradley, who was probably the most unknown of all these guys, big, tall, white guy. He is actually German American. He has both citizenship and in Germany and in the United States. He was born in West Germany, as his family was stationed at the U.S. military base there. And he grew up in Utah. He was nicknamed the Stormin' Mormon. Yes, just go with that.
Thanks, I hate it.
So, yes. He actually, I was telling Kyle, he was actually in the news recently, and I looked it up. In January of this year, he was struck from behind by a motorist while riding his bicycle near his house in Utah. which resulted in a traumatic spinal cord injury that left him paralyzed.
What?
Yeah. So prayers for Sean Bradley.
Oh man.
He participated in a lot of charitable endeavors. In the 2000 season, he donated $25 for each block shot to Brian's House, which is a managed facility for children affected by HIV and AIDS. National spokesperson for the Children's Miracle Network Hospitals, and participated in the Basketball Without Borders program with other NBA players like Dikembe Mutombo, Desanya Diop, and Malik Rose. And he found his experience with children in Africa uplifting. And he also participated in treating leprosy colonies in India through the Rising Star Outreach.
Nice.
So
Speaking of all that, you know who's not in this movie? Also, Magic Johnson. Rude.
Where was he at time period in that?
this was mid-90s. He had just retired from the NBA. He announced his battle with HIV in 1991.
Mm-hmm.
And he was actually going to make a comeback with the Lakers, I think, in 96. But I don't know how public he was around in the mid-90s. I know he was on the Dream Team in 92, I believe.
Yeah.
And that was his last big appearance until I think he tried to rejoin the Lakers in 96.
There's some good documentaries on him too.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
If you want to know good terms to use at family functions.
So is that one of your questions about the movie, about this movie that's been left unanswered? Where was Magic Johnson? Where was Scottie Pippen?
Look.
Where was Sean
No.
Kemp?
That doesn't even touch the surface. Are you ready for this?
Where was Hakeem
I got a lot of
Olajuwon?
unanswered questions. I have like 1 billion.
Where was Isaiah? Oh, that's right. Michael
Unanswered
Jordan hated
questions.
Isaiah Thomas.
Okay, we've already talked about some of this. There's terrible continuity between the rules of the Toon World and the real one. And no one said anything about Michael Jordan landing a spaceship in the middle of a baseball diamond. And why is Bill Murray even in this movie? And also, am I supposed to believe that 3-time NBA national championship winning Michael Jordan lives in an upscale mid-sized suburban house?
I did catch that. That got me.
Absolutely not. Also, he doesn't even have a car. He needs a ride home from the baseball field. Like, none of this.
To be fair,
That's
inside
what
I
his
think
house-
they assigned someone to drive him. He probably does have a car. But they were like, no, Michael, you don't need to drive. We'll get someone to do
The
that for
fact that
you.
he lives in that house in the movie is more unbelievable than the fact that, like, the tunes are real.
I thought about it while watching it because the outside caught me.
Right.
And I was like, that doesn't make sense. Inside the house looks awesome though.
It looks really
And then all of a
nice.
sudden they're in the kitchen.
It's
like
upscale.
That's a lot nicer than what the outside
Right.
looks like.
But if you look at Michael Jordan's real house,
well, I got to think
you know?
too. Is he renting this place?
I mean,
Because
maybe.
this is where he's playing. Well,
Right.
I guess,
Minor league
never mind.
baseball.
Yeah, it's minor league baseball. So maybe he's renting this area. That
I don't
spot
know.
lately.
It was ridiculous to me. I was like, okay.
No, I did think. about it.
Okay.
As a child, you didn't. You're like, that's a big house. Like,
Well, that's
it don't make
true.
much sense
Right.
to you. You also were more focused on the dog than you were the house.
Very
Like,
true.
So-
Cute
Yeah,
dog.
Charles.
Anyway, those are my thoughts.
I didn't have any left unanswered. I did have another question though, so I'll let Eric if you've got any
Okay.
unanswered.
I don't.
Okay.
So go ahead.
With the new movie coming out this weekend, I just had the thought of what are your expectations? Are you hoping it compares to this? And this can kind of go for all of us. What do you think it's going to do as far as Looney Tunes? As any of this right now, what are your thoughts with this finally happening after years of talking about it?
For me,
Mm-hmm.
I just hope it's a fun movie.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not expecting it's kind of like when the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movies came out with
Sure.
Michael Bay.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't expecting it to go or surpass the originals that we grew up with in the 90s. So the same thing here. I'm not expecting that. I'm just hoping for a fun movie. I want to see cameos from other NBA stars or WNBA stars. And I want a really good soundtrack. That's all I'm looking for.
I did see, I was on YouTube today, because it's hard unless you own it. At least with Apple Music, you can't find it. And YouTube, it's hard to find the Space Jam soundtrack. Just because
it's on Amazon Music.
Okay, well, all the copyrights and stuff.
Actually, no, it's not on Amazon Music. I bought it on Amazon Music.
Well, I typed it in this morning, when I was kind of getting ready to come over. And I found multiple spots that already is showing you the soundtrack for the second one. I was like, I'm not going to click it. First off, I don't know if it's legit. Secondly, I don't want to listen to this. I want to experience it in the movie theater. I want it to be that type of thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One thought that go ahead, Ashby, and I'll talk about it.
I think that this movie is probably going to be objectively better, but no one is going to want to admit it because the original Space Jam was our childhood.
I get that.
That's what I think.
Something, and along that line, I think it's one of those things you may look at it and it may be too far advanced now, and you would, you enjoyed it for what it was, being more simpler, like a cartoon and, athlete thrown in there, versus now there's a lot bigger things that they can do with technology, everything else. So I do think they'll probably be purists with it. It can go both ways though, because as Eric mentioned, like Ninja Turtles, like I'm a giant Ninja Turtle fan, and I went in even knowing and seeing what the Turtles look like and hated it. I was like, hopefully this will at least do something. I still don't think it stood up. Like, it wasn't good.
Right.
But by the time the second one came out, the Michael Bay Ninja Turtle movie, I went and watched it. And whenever I went in, I remember leaving and saying, I can see how kids would love this and enjoy it. And I got to think, in a world where we live, where Avengers and, Deadpool and everything else is out, that we wish they would make a Ninja Turtle movie like that. They didn't. They sold it for kids. And it's on Nickelodeon right now.
Right.
I left the second one at least saying I had fun. Remembering that as a child, Secret of the Ooze was such an amazing movie. I watched it over and over and over.
Right.
Versus you go back and look at it now, and it's like they literally played, they didn't even use their weapons in that movie. Like,
right.
So I get it. And so I think there's that part of it. With this, technology doesn't necessarily make a movie. But I do think one thing that stood out to me already is it reminds me of Ready Player One. Mm-hmm. Whenever he's in the video game world and they don't make a big deal out of it, but there's all these characters you see that you recognize, and it's part of the fun of watching that movie is looking everywhere to see where people show up. There's already been there's tons of stuff on YouTube. I already haven't watched it, but I remember watching this trailer for the first time, and you see Jack Nicholson's Joker. Mm-hmm. You see all these other characters in the stands, all these Warner Brothers properties. They've thrown all these characters in there.
Scooby-Doo.
Yes, and I love that, and I think that's going to be fun to see how any of these characters, if they play any roles, or literally just the funness of looking like where's Waldo and just figuring out who are all these people.
Honestly, that was part of the fun of Ready Player One.
It is.
I mean, the movie. So.
And I feel like you also have to just think about it from a generational standpoint.
Sure.
Like a whole new generation of kids. Mm-hmm. This is going to be their Space Jam. It's like every generation has a Bond, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm happy for them.
I thought about it yesterday. We were eating dinner, and I was thinking more about this of Looney Tunes was still a big thing when we were a kid. Mm-hmm. But to go back, I looked at Looney Tune history, and it literally started in the 30s and 40s, at least individual characters, and then it became Merry Melodies and Looney Tunes as time progressed. So our parents, grandparents grew up with these type of cartoons. We knew, it was passed down generation almost with that. A lot of the Looney Tunes that we watched was the Bugs and Tweety, cartoon, whatever hour or whatever it was, and seeing that, or even Bugs and Daffy. But a lot of that was still just, hey, we've got this great intro. Now here's all these cartoons that we've got this giant catalog of that we can just show and show and show. And I think it did that. And so for us, it just seemed like it was a normal thing. The same way we saw the Flintstones and the Jetsons and all these things seemed like current new shows to us, but actually it was just stuff our parents had watched or older, and it transformed down. But I think that I was thinking yesterday, do kids today even know about Looney Tunes? In a sense of watching it regularly, other than just knowing they exist.
Not like we and our parents would have.
No, because when we were growing up, we had a concerted effort. We had Saturday morning cartoons. Sure. We had after school cartoons on Monday through Friday from 3 to 5. Kids don't have that now.
Life's different. They have the accessibility, but
they have the accessibility, but they also have open worlds to so much more.
Sure.
And honestly, I don't think I don't think the Looney Tunes are super popular at this point, because why would they be?
Well, that was my thought.
I hate to put it that way.
No.
Even the Disney component, like Mickey Mouse and Goofy and Minnie and all that, they at least have some relevancy because of Disney World. Mm-hmm. There's not a Looney Tunes world. There is in this movie, but there's not a theme park or anything that gives them some instant relative, relevancy. So I don't know if kids would know what Looney Tunes are now.
Well, I looked it up, and in mid-2000s, Cartoon Network got all the rights, so Cartoon Network could play them nonstop whenever they wanted. I think later, 2000, teens or whatever, some of the rights got split up a little bit. I know, I think there's a newer show on HBO Max that you can watch. There's another one somewhere else, but there's things that are coming back around. And I know, there's been some more modern, same way they did come out with a Mickey Mouse cartoon in the past however many years. That same way, animation's a lot different. Things is just updated for kids of today. But I bring all that to the point of I think there's a great opportunity here for Looney Tunes. If kids can get into this, because before it may have been that we love these two things combined together, and maybe we didn't really care for, Michael Jordan. Maybe you just loved Looney Tunes, and that's why you went. This time, I think LeBron James being in it is going to bring, first off, you're going to have parents that are going to go and take their kids because it's part of their history, but it's going to bring Looney Tunes probably for the first time for a lot of kids that have ever seen this cartoon. And I think with the money and production into it, it's going to give them at least a pop where they're going to be like, I actually like these, what is this? Mm-hmm. And that's going to open up so many doors. I mean, with how many years they've talked about this, you've got to know that Warner Brothers has something lined up right behind it with probably HBO Max and other places, because since that's where their contracts are tied, but probably with TV, how all these networks have the tiers below them that we just don't, put together. They've got to have some show ready to go if it works out.
But yeah. I've seen how Warner Brothers has managed the DC properties too. So
that's true.
So I don't know if I'd give them that much credit, but maybe.
I would think with the way Looney Tunes is that they're working on it, at least there's something there. Maybe even just like spinoff ones that like we'll test the waters with these. But I think that there's something there, and I think that's awesome that it's an opportunity for kids at this point to come to know these Looney Tune characters that we knew as children and loved. And so I think there's just an awesome possibility. I know that like when Disney did the Muppets and came back out with Muppet movies, there was that where you saw all of a sudden the Muppets got network television shows and everything else. And Muppet Babies came back where my niece and nephew watched them now, and it's a new version.
Babies.
Yeah, like there's definitely options there. Tiny Toons is the same thing, where it was the version of Looney Tunes that we grew up with, current cartoons.
I mean, Scooby-Doo's been around since the 60s,
Sure.
70s, something like that.
Yeah.
So he keeps getting new iterations.
And so I think, just a great possibility there. I'm excited to see what happens. I definitely do want to see it. I'm excited to see what it will be. And I think you're right. Like for kids going forward, this will be their Space Jam. Hopefully it holds up.
Well, you ever heard of the Dream Team? Well, we're the mean team, wussy man. Honestly, rude. With that said,
especially playing to a player of the Dream Team.
Let's put our hands in everyone touching the basketball, and let's glean some information, and let's share 6 fun facts and observations about Space Jam. 1 fun fact for each NBA player featured prominently in this movie, not music, in this movie. Kyle,
yes,
you go first.
One question that both of you have mentioned a couple of times is, why was Bill Murray even in this movie? Well, there's a scene where Daffy Duck says, Mr. Murray, something that's been bugging me. How did you even get here? Talking about how he made it to the game at the end. And Bill Murray responds, I'm a friend of the producer. He just had a Teamster drop me off. Well, producer was Ivan Reitman, who also was the director of Ghostbusters and I think Stripes and some other things as well. So the producer actually was a friend of Bill Murray. That doesn't necessarily mean that's how he got there, but it makes sense that that's where there's a connection there.
Ashby?
I had to look up some stuff because I was like, oh, right, fun facts. I really like that. Apparently the whole concept for this movie began as a commercial, which I didn't know until I looked up fun facts. And I love a good pun. So apparently 1 year before Space Jam hit theaters, Michael Jordan and Bugs Bunny faced off in a game of 1-on-1 for Hair Jordan as a Nike commercial for Air Jordans, which I think is hilarious.
Nice. So my first fun fact, Warner Brothers built Jordan his own gym. When the studio signed Jordan, there was an understanding that their lead actor would also be focused on laying the foundation for a championship run with the Chicago Bulls. They accommodated his day job by sticking to a strict production schedule. They made sure that Jordan started at 9 a.m. and left no later than 6 with a 2-hour break for lunch and a workout by building a temporary indoor mini gym on the lot, which was christened the Jordan Dome. And Jordan, known for his intense work ethic, made sure that free time didn't go to waste. He gathered his co-stars for pickup games and extended the invite to anyone. Actor Keith Gibbs, who was an extra on the film, told Grantland, I walk in and it's Reggie Miller, Charles Barkley, Alonzo Mourning, Charles Oakley, Grant Hill shows up, Jerry Stackhouse shows up, and now all of a sudden it's an NBA All-Star pickup game every night. And Jordan was just as generous with his trash talk as he was with invites to the games. Jordan hit a 35-footer on me, said Gibbs. I mean, it was ridiculous. Leg out, tongue out, all that stuff. He hit a 35-footer on me and goes, get the F off the court.
That's what I love. You get a sense in, The Last Dance. Like, Jordan was just...
He was a competitor, man.
He was a hardcore competitor.
Ruthless.
And, I mean, he could be funny about it. He could sometimes be sort of kind about it, but sometimes he was just like, you know what? I'm better than you. I'm better than you and you and you and you. And it's true, right? So you can't say anything about
It's
it.
true.
But I'm just that. And he also like just couldn't. The scene where someone slighted him in a restaurant and he was like, and you know what? I took that personally.
Yeah.
And so then he just like absolutely made it his business to embarrass that dude.
Completely made it all up in his head.
Yes.
Just to have some reason
And
to compete hard in the game.
And that made it personal for me.
It did.
Right. Just like, come on.
And all of a sudden, it became personal to me.
Mm-hmm.
So funny.
Kyle, number 4.
Something that has withstood the test of time. The Space Jam website is still the same Space Jam website.
I was hoping
as
one
we
of
were
y'all would
kids.
bring it up.
I think
Nothing
it's
dies
fun.
on the internet.
No, but like so many things have been, it's literally a time capsule
Yeah.
where everything is just like they made it when this movie came out.
In 1996.
Right.
So I think it's great to show our kids, or like not necessarily even our kids, but just kids of a generation that are here
Here's
now.
what the internet used to look like.
Literally,
Right.
that pull
Back
up
when
their
I
phone.
was your age.
Get on Netscape
Yep.
on your massive colored Mac computer,
Mm-hmm.
desktop computer. Do that little you know,
Beep, boop, beep.
right?
And then find Space Jam.
The
like,
internet comes in through the phone line.
1 hour later.
Go to spacejam.com.
so I would encourage you guys, like, if you haven't looked at that, I mean, I know people have talked about it for a long time. It's not some big surprise, but if you haven't, go look at it now. It will bring back moments of your childhood when you first, especially if you were in that generation like us, where you just did get the internet, to look at these things and say, I remember this. I remember when everything was like this. It was a bunch of clicks and points and like little things everywhere. So I would say just definitely check into that if you haven't seen that yet.
All right, Ashby, number 5.
So I thought it was really interesting, again, sort of talking about why certain people were in this movie. And apparently, the director had a lot of other choices for Jordan's publicist before we got to Wayne Knight, right?
Okay.
Michael J. Fox, Chevy Chase, and Jason Alexander all passed on the role. And I could see...
I can see Chevy Chase and Jason Alexander.
Right.
I can't see
I can't
Michael
really
J.
see-
Fox
I
there.
think he would have played it more like a straight man, you know, like a suit kind of personal assistant, and I don't think it would have been as funny.
I would have seen Michael J. Fox more in the Bill Murray role.
Yes,
Sure.
yes,
Especially coming off of Teen Wolf at some point.
right, right.
But I can see Chevy Chase being and Jason Alexander both being the blundering, bumbling.
Yes, yes.
You know.
Yeah. It would have to have been a totally different, like, character.
Right.
All right, number 6, and this is, I guess, a fun fact just about Michael Jordan. And you know, this movie explores the fictionalized account of what happened between his retirements between '93 and '95. Jordan's first retirement came in October 1993. He was citing a lack of desire to play and the death of his father 3 months earlier. He shocked the world by announcing his retirement. He was coming off his 3rd NBA championship and an Olympic gold medal as part of the 1992 Dream Team. Now, that's what, you know, real world says happened. He retired because of that. All right. The movie says, well, he retired because he wanted to, you know, he wanted to play baseball, and then he ended up saving Looney Tunes. Well, here's where it gets interesting if conspiracy theories are your thing.
They are.
Tinfoil hat wearers believe that Jordan's first retirement was actually anything but. The conspiracy theory dictates that NBA Commissioner David Stern actually had a clandestine agreement with Jordan to get his gambling habit under control before incurring any damage to the league or to Jordan himself. So Stern suspended Jordan for a year while number 23 got his personal life together. These theories contend. So consider this. Jordan was becoming one of the most marketable and prominent professional athletes in history. So even though most of Jordan's gambling habits were legal, the image of Jordan having an outstanding gambling debt with a convicted drug dealer, which is true, would be potentially harmful to Jordan and the league. Jordan was also spotted at a blackjack table in Atlantic City the night before an Eastern Conference Finals game before the Knicks. So still, Stern maintained on several occasions that Jordan's retirement was totally legitimate. He didn't suspend him for gambling. And it's hard to believe that even a league as powerful as the NBA would be able to keep something like that a secret all these years later after all. But there's still some people who swear Jordan got suspended for gambling and they just covered up to say he was retired for a year and a half. But he was really suspended for 18 months. So,
Well, I mean, I think, you know, when you watch The Last Dance or whatever, and you think about a lot of the emotional stuff he was going through with his father's death, I think that had and
a
then
lot.
and
to
then
do
the
with
media wanted to tie his father's death into the gambling, right? Like it was some
Like
big
a mob
conspiracy
connection, yeah.
that like his
Yeah.
father had been killed because of his gambling debts, which is truly awful. To make it somehow his fault, right? Anyway, that's the thing about conspiracy theories, though, right? It's like it takes a lot. The more
You've
people
gotta-
that are involved with a conspiracy theory, the less likely it is to be true that all of those people would keep their mouth shut.
Yes, I've always been told the best secret kept is between two people, provided one of them is dead.
That's right.
So, I mean, if you have this many people who think they're in on it, one of them is bound to open their mouth. At
Eric,
some
have you been
point.
watching Pretty Little Liars?
No. Why?
That's the theme of the show.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
All I could think about was like how many people has Eric killed? Like he feels so strongly about that,
Exactly.
and he's the one that's still here. So how many people are back there in the backyard?
Secret.
Mm-hmm.
Secrets are
Got
no
a
fun.
secret,
I don't want
can
any
you keep
Secrets
it?
hurt someone.
I don't want any secrets with you. That means
'Cause
I'll be
two
dead.
can keep a secret if one of them is dead. That's the theme to Pretty Little Liars.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Did not
Maybe
know
you'd love that show.
that. No, I tried watching it.
You would hate it.
I tried watching it post Secret Life of the American
It's
Teenager.
truly terrible.
Definitely hated it.
Truly terrible. It
Who is A?
romanticizes a
Anyway.
relationship between a teacher and a student.
Yeah, I
it's
would hate
very,
that.
yeah, it's very problematic. Anywho, maybe there is no intelligent life out there in the universe after all. But that doesn't apply to our listeners, Kyle. Let's hear what our listeners had to say in our social media shout-outs.
Alrighty. I did this post this week, and whenever I did, I also included a little bit of information about an upcoming episode where we're going to talk about some of our favorite rewatchable movies. So some people's comments kind of tied the two together, so I will throw that in there. Michael Latcher commented, it's just only about Space Jam, and said, 10 for 10, if it's on, then I'm watching it. Too many classic moments that still make me smile. So he's saying if he turns on the television, Space Jam's on, he's stopping whatever he's doing, he's going to watch the rest of it.
That's fair.
Michael Thompson posted a gif of the final shot in the game where the Monstars are all tackling Michael Jordan. His arm is like 12, 20 feet long, whatever, and he's dunking the ball. Michael said, hands down, the greatest game-winning shot of all time.
For sure happened.
For sure.
100%.
You can't prove it.
April Holland Phillips commented and said, this is on constant repeat in our car for long trips. Said my girls absolutely love it. They just don't make movies like this anymore. So on long trips, this is their go-to to put in their vehicle to watch as they travel.
Honestly, good choice.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that was it. Just wanted to double check.
We
But
didn't have anything on Instagram.
no, and so I think it's a good thing. Like I said, mine's kind of combined, so we do have a lot more comments for rewatchable movies. But yeah, that's what we got from the folks.
Wonderful.
Nice.
Well, thanks, guys. You got a lot of, well, whatever it is, you got a lot of it.
Thanks.
Big thank you to Ricky Lyles for his contributions to today's episode. We hope you enjoyed this discussion as much as we did, and that you're as pumped for the rest of this journey into pop culture as we are. As Kyle alluded to, next week's episode will be top rewatchable movies, and we're very excited about that. Until next time, don't ever call me doll. Stay as cool as the other side of the pillow. We will see you next week. Bye.
What the what?
Everybody get up. It's time to slam now. We got a real jam going down.
We're going to do the Space Jam.
Space Jam.
All right.
Bye.